All right, guys, happy July 4th. This is your Exam 2, Parts 1 and 2 study guide. Again, go over the how to study document that is way back in Module 3 to make sure that you are studying correctly. I'm going to go over the things that you should be thinking about, but I want to make sure that you understand or you think about how you studied last time. And if you didn't do as well as you wanted, what do you need to do to study differently? So again, for exam 1 is completely out of the notes. So all of the information that is in the notes is fair game. That means you should know the definition or the function of the novel, the early American novel, know the different stock characters that were associated with the early American novel, the virgin, the rake, the friend, know the function of that, the didactic function, the teaching, know how that was aimed at, part of the appeal was not shaming parents, understand the background, the true story that we talked about with Elizabeth Whitman, know how the novel ends, know what happens to the two main characters, know what happens to Eliza, and know what happens to Major Sanford at the end. In terms of the tales, know the definition of the tales, how the tale differs from the early American novel. Understand that the tales often use those storytelling frames to flaunt the fictionality. Understand that a lot of those tales were adapted from European folklore to kind of create an American folklore. Know who the characters in both Legend of Sleepy Hollow and Rip Van Winkle are. And that includes the minor characters. Understand who the alderman in Legend of Sleepy Hollow. Understand Katrina Van Tassel, who that character is. Understand in Rip Van Winkle everybody from Rip's wife to Peter Vanderdonk, who is the cultural folklorist. Then we get to the conflict between the literary marketplace and the popular marketplace. Know the definitions of those two terms. Know which writers were represented in which group. Understand the importance of ambiguity and the power of blackness to the literary marketplace. Understand that for those writers, the idea or the hope was to be able to write a story or a novel that appealed to both the literary reader and the popular reader at the same time. Understand how Hawthorne managed to do that, often by supplying morals at the end of stories that completely contradicted or undermined what the literary message of it might be. Understand the background of the Scarlet Letter. Understand what the function there of the custom house is, and the idea that Hawthorne lost his job, had given up writing, took a government job, lost his job because of patronage. Understand what comment he is making about America in the custom house, and his basic argument that in America there is no place for the creative imagination. There's no marketplace to support it. Know all of those characters that he mentions in the custom house, particularly know who Jonathan Pugh is. Know how he attributes the Scarlet Letter, the original manuscript, to his predecessor in the office, and understand why he might do that. He's trying to present this story of Hester Prynne not as his creation, but as a historical document. But everything in the text undermines that. Not the least of which is the fact that the scarlet A stands for ambiguity instead of adultery. Know the definition of the cult of true womanhood that comes up with Fanny Fern, the idea that women were expected to be maternal and self-sacrificing. Understand Fanny Fern's take on men of the time and how she cautions women against getting caught up with romance and being taken advantage of by husbands and being called to sew and cook all the time. Understand her anger at the reviews and how she comes back on men in terms of assuming women can only write about romance. Um, okay, know a lot of the minor characters again in all of those stories. In the Scarlet Letter or in the Raven, understand. Just go through it and look at names and understand what all of the different names are. Understand why the statue or the bust is there. Understand what if there's basically a word that looks like it's foreign. It's good game. I'm not going to ask you Nevermore. That's a little too obvious. I might ask you Eleanor. What's the name of the female character in there? Understand what happens with Dimmesdale at the end of the Scarlet Letter when he gets up to confess there at the end and he rips open his shirt. Understand what's on his chest. Understand Hawthorne's point in presenting that scene and saying it's not clear if it's true or if it's just something that they imagine. In the Birthmark, know who the three characters are: Almer, Georgiana, and Aminadab. Understand what each of those represents. Understand what that story means in terms of popular fiction. It's a parable about science and how science is trying to create a world more perfect than nature, but also understand the literary meaning to where he's arguing that there's, again, no place for literature in America. Understand the relationship between Roderick and Madeline Usher in The Fall of the House of the Usher. There's a hint of incest there. There's some sort of dark secret. But understand the twist there at the end where Roderick Usher keels over dead because he realizes they prematurely buried his sister. Understand in there as well who Ethelred is when they are and the Worm Song. Understand why those elements are in there, that those are sort of feeding Roderick Usher's imagination. Again, understand the background of the Coquette, who those real-life people were. Legend of Sleepy Hollow, Brom Bones, Katrina Van Tassel again, Rip Van Winkle again. Know who Hendrik Hudson was. Know all of those minor characters that pop up. Understand the twist at the end that basically Rip Van Winkle has slept through the Revolutionary War. None of these questions are meant to be trick questions. I'm asking you definitions. Which of the following is not true of Gothic literature? Which of the following is not true of the early American novel? Which is not true, or which is true of tales? Which is true of the literary marketplace? Which is true of the popular marketplace? So just know all those differences, all those definitions. Go through and make sure you understand the basic plot of each story, know how they end, know the major twists. Again, everything I'm looking at is pretty much there in the notes for part one. For part two, I'm just testing your reading comprehension, understanding if you understand what the works are about. So again, no trick questions, but they are detail-oriented questions. If you're sitting there flipping through your notes, you're not studying. You have got to engage these concepts. Write out the definitions, make a list of the characters, make sure you understand what each story is about. And if you don't understand it from reading it, there's no harm to get online and look at a study guide, look at Wikipedia. I really don't care what secondary source you look to. But you've got to understand why, if you are not able to make sense of these texts, what's going on in your reading comprehension. I'm going to tell you right now, reading comprehension is terrible because we don't read enough. We're too much of a visual culture. And part of this class is meant to sort of make you aware of what you have to do individually in order to get your reading comprehension up to college level where it should be. You're capable of it. Trust me. It just takes work. All right. I think that's just about everything. So again, for exam 1, know the definitions: early American novel, the tale, Gothic literature, popular marketplace, literary marketplace. Know all of what I say is important about each work. And then for part 2, know the characters, know the plots, and be able to recognize the most famous lines out of the work. And I mean, there's stuff in there that should give it away for you. It should not be something you have to guess at. Know the minor characters. Those will pop up sometimes. Know who, again, in the birthmark, know who the lab assistant is. In Scarlet Letter, know who Governor Bellingham is and what he does to Hester. Know who Pearl is, what she represents. So, again, go ahead and study. The exam is open until next Tuesday night, July 13th at midnight. Make sure I would wait until next Sunday or next Monday to take it, so you give yourself time to study. I know nobody's going to study today because it's a holiday and tomorrow's a holiday, but I want you to be working toward that studying and think about how you study. All right, I'll be available if you have any questions. Happy 4th of July.